evening. Thank you, and welcome to the 2023 Living Landmarks celebration. We have another wonderful group of New Yorkers to salute this evening, and the 50th anniversary of the New York Landmarks Conservancy. I'm Peg Breen, president of the New York Landmarks Conservancy. We'll begin with a look at how the Landmarks Conservancy preserves the buildings and neighborhoods that are the heart and soul of this great city. The Landmarks Conservancy has preserved and protected New York for 50 years. We helped New York recover in past emergencies, and we're doing our part to help the city's recovery now. Our grants and technical assistance help buildings in Lower Manhattan damaged on 9/11. We saved the survivor's staircase at Ground Zero. It's now featured in the 9/11 Museum. After recent hurricanes and earlier superstorms, our emergency grants help nonprofits repair damage and reopen. We've loaned and granted some $62 million through the years, contributing to some $900 million in total restoration projects. We're helping religious institutions in underserved communities, with everything from conditions assessments to repairing roofs. Our Sacred Sites grants have helped more than 840 religious institutions of all denominations. One grant helped the Stuyvesant Heights Christian Church in Brooklyn repair a large stained glass window.
Sacred Site came in, they evaluated, they assessed, they encouraged fundraising with us. The preacher can preach, but once the edifice is erected in such a beautiful manner, it feels as if there's a place of belonging, a place of beauty, and a place of hope. It offers hope.
Our loans are helping homeowners throughout the boroughs. Callie Janoff received a loan for work on her Brooklyn brownstone. She's been a friend and proponent ever since.
You know, being a landlord in New York City is not for the faint of heart, so it's really incredibly difficult to find people to trust.
Janoff learned she could trust the Conservancy after our staff helped repair her stairs, restore the entryway, and even obtain a state homeowner tax credit for the work.
I loved working with the team, and we had such an incredible experience. It's like finding gold.
Landmarks are important to communities throughout the city. Historic districts are drawing cards for tech companies, women and minority-owned businesses. They're attracting residents and tourists. As New York continues to recover, these historic areas will be economic drivers again. The city's landmarks anchor us, reminding us that New York has come through difficult times before. We're proud to be the New York Landmarks Conservancy, and we'll continue to preserve the city we love. And now I am pleased to introduce the 2023 Living Landmarks.
Hip hop, to me, it's a culture. It defines a person, and also it's for the young at heart.
Got to throw your hands up. My music ain't got no color. If it's split, I'm going to play it. And it's it. It took off. So white people, black people, if it's a boogie, you're going to dance to it. No problem.
People started dancing to Herc's music 50 years ago at a back-to-school party Cindy organized in their Bronx building. Herc used 2 turntables to elongate the drum breaks in records, and hip-hop was born. Since then, Cindy and Herc have amassed a lot of honors, including Cirque's admission to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The two were featured in many of the 50th anniversary celebrations of hip-hop this year, even at a concert at Yankee Stadium.
It all started 50 years ago today, right here in the Bronx, with one innovator, and his name is DJ Kool Herc.
We made it to Yankee City. That was it. We're not on the block no more.
Hip-hop is an important part of the music industry and our culture, but Herc and Cindy remember its start as a lifeline for Bronx kids at a time of great turmoil in New York.
Within that time, hip-hop thrived. Hip-hop came out of that. It changed a lot of the gang violence that was happening. Now, as teenagers, we knew that there was something different that you can be involved with. You can be a DJ, you can be a b-boy, you're doing graffiti artist. You were getting some sort of belonging to be part of something.
I was a shepherd, you know what I'm saying? Look for the flocks, and that was it, you know what I'm saying? So I watched them.
Cindy went on to graduate from the Fashion Institute of Technology. She's worked in fashion and real estate, but she also always managed her brother's career.
But with all of that, I always stayed with hip hop. At some point, I knew there was a legacy that we had to start securing the legacy.
The two began a successful 3-year campaign to get their former home at 1520 Sedgwick Avenue listed on the National Register of Historic Places.
But it was important, once we saved the building, that was a significant part to show that it became the birthplace of hip hop. And that's one of the reasons we were able to save the building, because of that, because something historic took place there. So that was very important. And also to name the street also. The street was named Hip Hop Boulevard.
Cindy and Herc are proud and amazed at how hip-hop has spread around the world, but they believe New York put its stamp on the music.
Hip-hop was created here, DJ Kool, Herc, and myself. That whole formula, that really says a lot. So New York has to be a main focal point for people to look at about hip-hop, because nobody else could claim it. No other country could claim it. It's here, and we're here as living landmarks. To know that it did happen here in New York, in the Bronx.
What's amazing about New York is the mix of people who've come here, and that means the mix of ideas and opportunities and cultures. That's what gives this city its unbelievable power. It's what's made us the center of the world.
Anthony Marx runs an institution central to New York, the New York Public Library. More New Yorkers use public libraries than any other civic institution.
Books have never gone out of fashion. Our circulation continues at record numbers. We saw during the pandemic that people switched to ebooks, and we'd spent a decade investing in that so that we didn't lose any circulation, even though we had to close briefly, which is amazing. We don't care how you read. We care that you read.
Marx notes that libraries today are more than just places to read. Branches are now becoming learning centers in their neighborhoods.
It's a transformation of what a library means, so that it's still the valued passive space, but now it's proactive education space. From story time to after school to college guidance to teen centers, English language for immigrants and computer skills classes and workforce development and civics. The libraries aren't just shush spaces anymore.
One of the most exciting transformations turned the Midtown Manhattan branch into the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library. And the majestic 42nd Street Library, one of our most beautiful landmarks, has also undergone extensive exterior and interior restorations.
This building is an absolute masterpiece, and I'm amazed every day I walk in here. We have spent about $350 million in this building in my time at this library. It is a money sponge, and it is worth every penny. What's important about this building isn't that it inspires me, which it certainly does. It's that it's a statement to the public, to the poor kid from the Bronx who gets in here, wanders in for free, to say everyone should have truly inspiring and respectful spaces, and that the work of the mind is as magisterial as this building.
Marx also believes that the city's historic architecture benefits New Yorkers as well.
This city is so inspiring. Its architecture is amazing. We as an institution have to live up to that. That's why we've invested in not just this building, but in all of our buildings. It's a better New York for us protecting our historical legacy and our architecture, which inspires us and shapes us into better citizens.
One of the things I love about New York is the energy. There's so much to do here. The arts, museums, culture. It's a wonderful city.
Even though it's so incredibly expensive to live here, somehow hundreds of thousands of young people manage to come. So there's a constant revitalization of the city with new people and with new energy, and it's always refreshing itself.
Because Angela Vallot and James Basker appreciate the city, they believe in giving back.
It's gratitude, and I think it's our obligation to participate as citizens, support the wonderful institutions that are here in New York, because we benefit so tremendously from all that these institutions offer. I think it's our obligation and our duty. And it's also a joy. I mean, it's fun.
Vallot and Basker are in different fields, but they complement each other. Vallot is an attorney who grew up committed to social justice.
I get inspired by organizations that want to make a difference.
It's the goal of the firm she founded, to help companies create more inclusive cultures.
Because what we really are trying to do is help organizations become more inclusive and create work environments that allow people from different backgrounds to grow and thrive in those companies.
That's also a goal of the National Legal Defense Fund, which was founded by former Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall. Vallot is its current co-chair.
For me personally, having grown up in Louisiana during Jim Crow segregation, and as an African American who helped to integrate our town, the work of LDF really resonates with me personally.
James Basker promotes American history as president of the Gilder Lehrman Institute. A noted historian, he is focused on the 18th century.
The United States is a product of the 18th century and of Enlightenment thinking.
Basker has also focused on African American history.
A lot of my work in that area has been to make materials and stories available that bring back into view the experiences of African Americans, the ways that their experiences in the founding era and the early republic sort of shaped our history thereafter.
The Gilder Lehrman Institute has partnered with Hamilton playwright Lin-Manuel Miranda. It uses the popular play as a way to engage hundreds of thousands of students in early American history, many of them from inner-city Title I schools.
Hamilton is the most important thing to happen, I think, in theater and in history education, probably in the last 50 years. What the program did was enable us to develop a curriculum where kids dived into the founding era documents and events and then told some of those stories to create an original piece, a poem, a song, a rap piece about one of those founding era people or events. And now we've made that possible for several 100,000 kids, not only in New York, but in places where the show toured, and now in an online version of the program.
The couple also share an appreciation for preservation, as well as the city's history.
Because it gives us a deeper sense of the importance of this place, going back centuries. It's not just now. And I think it's important to people's identity, their sense of coherence.
I think it's very important to protect our architectural history. We have so many iconic, fabulous buildings in New York, and it's part of what makes this city great.
The best thing about New York is that you're never going to completely understand it. I've lived here almost my entire life. I feel I'm every day discovering something new.
Paul Goldberger's discoveries often involve architecture, writing for The Times and The New Yorker and other publications, and authoring several books on architecture. Goldberger has long examined what and how this city builds.
Architecture matters because it makes our life better when it works. It enriches our life. It does what all great art can do, which is make life more meaningful and better.
Goldberger thinks New York still builds some excellent architecture. He cites the Goldman Sachs headquarters on West Street and the new Perelman Arts Center at the World Trade Center.
The real problem today is not that we're unable to create great buildings when we have the intention and the focus and the right client and the right amount of money. It's that we don't create good enough ordinary buildings. The everyday buildings aren't good enough. If you look at the ordinary buildings we built in the 1920s on Park Avenue, on West End Avenue, places like that, they were really good. The ordinary buildings we build today are not really good. That's the great challenge of architecture in New York right now.
Goldberger also thinks it's important to preserve our historic buildings and neighborhoods.
People want to be in London for lots of reasons, including the fact that it looks and feels like London and continues to look and feel like London despite all the buildings that have been built and all the change that has happened. And we need to manage our change in such a way as to not lose our essential quality.
He doesn't buy the view that preservation stops growth.
If one looks around New York today, it's not as though we have a shortage of large, glassy new buildings. I mean, the real estate industry will always cry wolf.
Goldberger has won many awards, but he does like his latest title.
First, it's an honor to join such an incredible roster of living landmarks. And it's also a kind of nice spur. You designate a landmark because you believe it's going to have continuing value to enrich the world, or you wouldn't bother designating it. So let's hope that this means I might have still some continuing value, I hope.
I'd rather be a woman in business in New York than anywhere else in the world.
Mary Ann Tighe is one of New York's most successful businesswomen. She's won a slew of real estate awards and helped shape significant areas of Manhattan. But her early work was in the arts, piqued by childhood visits to the Metropolitan Museum.
I can remember coming into the Met, and when I think about how young I was allowed to go alone to the Met, no one blinked an eye. And I would spend the entire day there. I always wanted to be close to that institution, and I also came to love the visual arts through that institution.
Tighe began her career in Washington, even serving in the White House as arts advisor to then Vice President Walter Mondale. But it wasn't home.
I always felt in the years that I lived in Washington, D.C., that I was a New Yorker in exile.
She returned to New York and started the A&E network. She turned to real estate to eliminate the considerable travel A&E required.
I felt like I got real estate. It was visual. I loved the city, and I felt that it was something I could learn. I was 36 when I started, but fortunately it worked out.
It certainly did work out. Tighe reinvigorated the Times Square area, bringing Condé Nast to 4 Times Square, and later relocated the New York Times in that area. She also continues to work on rebuilding the Trade Center.
You know, the thing about the Trade Center is the tragedy of 9/11 always made you feel you were doing something that was more than a brokerage transaction. You were doing something that was intended to heal the city.
Tighe was instrumental in convincing the city to upzone Midtown East around Grand Central. That process enables St. Patrick's Cathedral, where Tighe is a trustee, to sell its air rights and restore its iconic building.
So the opportunity to monetize the air rights that float above the cathedral, and to realize that we could do the same for St. Bart's, we could do it for Central Synagogue, etc., taking the landmark and not just preserving the landmark, but being able to protect the landmark with a source of funds, that to me is the magic of Midtown East.
The pandemic has had a serious impact on commercial real estate. Tighe sees a tough road ahead.
The need to examine how we zone our various districts is critical, and I think we will not come out of this until we engage it. This is not one we're just going to solve by time.
The real estate world is not always fond of preservation, but Tighe is fine with the title Living Landmark.
Any New Yorker will tell you that part of their love of the city is the mix of different eras. A walk down any avenue will produce for you. But it's got to be balanced with being able to do things that allow the city to grow at the same time.
You know what's the best thing about New York? What we're doing now. These great events, getting together with people, meeting new friends, celebrating accomplishments of wonderful, dedicated people. I like that sense of community, that in probably the biggest metropolitan area in the world, there's still a sense of neighborhood and belonging and rootedness. That's one of the many things I like about this great city.
Cardinal Dolan came from the Midwest, but he quickly became an avid New Yorker. He says there are a lot of sacred spaces in New York, not all of them religious.
Hey, Yankee Stadium, I was installed as Archbishop on April 15th, 2009. The next day, I went to Yankee Stadium. You know what that did for a kid who grew up with Maris and Mantle? This is sacred. This is transcendent. Hallelujah.
New York is also a media center. The Cardinal adapted with podcasts, a radio show, and video tours of his favorite churches. He says he doesn't understand the technical aspects, but he's happy when people respond.
I'm thinking, wow, thank God. Bingo, to use a Catholic word. I didn't know these things are going to work, but I'm sure glad they do.
The Cardinal is the go-to guy when the media needs a religious spokesperson. He credits his title and his predecessors for that.
I'm thinking of Cardinal O'Connor. I'm thinking of Cardinal Cook. I'm thinking of Cardinal Spellman. I'm thinking of Archbishop John Hughes, who was our first Archbishop. In fact, I'm cherished to wear his cross. I thought people in the Conservancy would appreciate that we don't throw anything out here, okay?
The New York Archdiocese is very large, but at its heart is St. Patrick's Cathedral.
This is where people come to smile, to cry, to ask, to thank. St. Patrick's is special, and I love it.
For all its prominence, the cathedral was in dire need of restoration when the Cardinal arrived. He oversaw a major multi-year renewal.
I didn't want that to crumble, nor did I want to give the impression that the church really isn't here to stay. No, we got a dream, we got faith, we got trust. This is worth saving.
The Archdiocese is also facing how and whether to save several of its parish churches as populations shift.
That's sometimes a challenge for a guy who loves history, who loves to preserve, but sometimes, like the people here tonight, we got to make a tough decision. Can we do it? Should we do it? Are we able to do it? Is it going to set us back if we do it? Or can we dig in and conserve it? Who knows? Tough decisions. God help us.
New York is facing a lot of tough challenges too. As a man of faith, Cardinal Dolan takes the long view.
And so when we confront the violence, the crime, the poverty, the suffering, the sickness, look what we went through with COVID, we're tempted to think, it's never been this bad before. But of course, we've been through it all before. Why did we go visit the 9/11 monument? We're reminded of tragedies and difficulties we've been through before, but we're also reminded that our faith and our grit and our trust and our love and respect for each other got us through, and it'll still do it.
Cardinal Dolan is right. New Yorkers always come through. That's because we know New York is worth fighting for. Thank you for coming and for another wonderful evening. And please know that the Landmarks Conservancy will continue to preserve the city we love.